So one of the leading baskets and the first baskets, of course, we all know in our culture is that it was a twineware, working strictly with your hands. And I've worked on this type of weaving for all these years, trying to figure out how did they use these fibers without having any metal tools. Well, we do have an obsidian tool, which is natural, which is gathered and traded from the east side near Mono Lake, across the mountain from Yosemite. And so I worked with that. And then the other tool that I use, instead of a metal awl, we use a bone awl, a deer leg bone. So I had those two pieces in my hand, and I began to try to work with them. And then after a while, I got to thinking, now, how did they make those fine, narrow stitches? Okay, Julia, look at the wood. Look at the diameter of the wood. So I began to investigate. Looking at the diameters of wood, I found out the larger diameter of the wood, you'd get a wider stitch. The narrower the diameter of the wood, then you get the fine stitch. And it's all done by feeling and by, of course, watching the plants grow and being respectful to the plant. When you go out into the willow bushes, you know, I just feel like a ballerina out there dancing around, stooping down and picking up the willows and laying them down very carefully, bundling them up. All earth ends go together. And because, see, when you structure your basket, you have to put the fiber into the basket the way it grows. So that was one of the first things that I learned. But then I think about my lessons from my elders. The very, very first lesson I learned was when I was newly married into the village there and was staying with my husband's grandmother. And I used to go out and I had to watch her, and she'd sit by the fireplace and she'd scrape her willows and weave her basket. So I thought I'd be real helpful in helping cleaning up the fibers that she had on the ground. So I reached down and I picked up all the fibers and I put them in a fire. And then she said, "Stop, Julia." She said, "We don't burn those. We return those back to the earth so that the other plants will have food." And so, again, that was the first lesson in recycling. And I always remember that. And when I make my baskets, I make little tiny things because I don't like to waste the material. That little tiny piece of wood that's like a toothpick, you could make something out of it. And so we're very careful when we structure our baskets that we use almost everything that comes from that fiber. The willows, you split the willows, wait for them to turn yellow. If you want a brown color, you leave the cambium layer on the wood. If you want it darker, you hang the fibers out in the sun and it gets suntan. I work with the sedge roots that come from the soil, the sand along the riverbanks, and we have digging sticks, and we go into the sand beds, and we do prayer, song, and offering. We get down on our hands and knees. We sit there and we feel the soil, the beautiful texture of the sand, and you start to dig, and then you get all excited. There's the root, there's the root. But remember, Julia, you never go into the root bed because in the summertime, it's the home of the rattlesnakes. So you have to be very careful. And so my teacher taught me that. One of my first lessons is that you be real careful and you never go into anyone else's territory, because Indian women have their specialties on the kind of baskets they make. Sometimes some women like roots that are about 3 or 4 feet long, especially with the sedges, and some like the shorter pieces. My first lesson in making a sedge basket, the teacher, she wanted to put me up in a higher class, and she said, "Because you've been weaving for a while." I said, "No." I said, "I came to learn everything from you." I said, "I want to start at the beginning." So my first roots that I got were 10 inches long and very crinkly, and they were not straight at all. And I looked at those and I thought, I'm here to learn now. You just listen and you watch her. And so we began to soak our material. We began to split it down. We can take the sedge root. It's what we call the cream of the crop in basket weaving. And so all weavers today now, they want to use the sedge root. But it's better to learn from a fiber that's hard, that's dense, like willows and the California redbud, very dense wood, very hard to work with. And so I struggled for that first year in making that first little basket. Took me 1 whole year to get it together. I would go into museums and look at the designs and the shapes and the baskets. I would go to places like in Yosemite Valley, the beautiful Ahwahnee Hotel that has a lot of straight line designs there. And when you look up on the wall and look up on the ceiling, and I'd go and sit and I'd look up there and I'd think about those designs. Now, how did they get those designs in the basket? Come back and figure it out. And what it is just a matter of balancing, especially when you do the circle baskets. A little tiny knot. One lady said, "That's a little belly button start, Julia." And I said, okay, because there's many different styles and stitches that you learn as you make a basket. And so we start with that little Paiute start. There's another start that we call the Pomo start, which starts with a knot. There's many different starts of basketry when you begin to look and examine the basket. Are you looking at a basket that have stitches that are down to the right and up to the left, or down to the left and up to the right? Are you going clockwise? Are you going counterclockwise? What are you doing? You know, all these things take into consideration about how you stitch that basket. And so when I do the basket, I think of people, that we're all different. We're going to all see things and do things in a different way. But what you have to learn is you have to learn, like in our way, the traditional way of setting together a basket. Then later on, you can expand and you begin to think about, now, maybe they did this, or maybe they did that. And so a lot of my baskets are sort of kind of old style, and a lot of people say, "Oh, your baskets are dark." I said, yes, because I'm using water that has iron in it, and so it discolors my fibers. But I like the older color like that, you know. And then if I use the newer one, it's nice too, but I still, you know, think is very important. And like what we have here today, educators who have been here and know the stories, like the first story about the photograph. I like the stairs, looking at the stairs, thinking about me, how you have to start at the bottom and you have to crawl up until you get to the top. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to get on the top, but if you have it in your heart that you're going to get there, you can make it. So my work, like the gentleman said, has traveled all over, and it's because I've worked with probably these women who had their heart in their basket. So whenever you do your work, it comes from your heart. And a lot of people would say, "Well, why are you doing that?" I said, well, because it comes from inside of me, and that if I want to do traditional ways, I can. But it's not very right to go and look at a design and copy it, you know, because you want to create your own patterns. So I've created some kind of far out patterns, but anyway, it's all done in a very nice spiritual, traditional way. I guess I could go on and talk about what my baskets are. I'm looking at my daughter. Are you waving your hand, Lucy? So she's my little timekeeper, my daughter Lucy. She's following my footsteps, and she and my granddaughter couldn't come, and my little great-grandgirl, she wanted to go to school, which is important. So this place here is just beautiful. When I look around here, I looked up at the decoration on the stage here, and I told my friend, I said, I'm going to take that material and go home and make a dress out of it, because it's a pretty color, you know. So everything I look around, I looked at the colors in here, the balloons, and I look at all the people in here, just so happy and so intense, and that's what it takes, you know. It takes being part of the scene, which for a long time I felt that I was left out, but I just tried not to show it, you know. And then when I began to think about the things that I've done, I've just slowly entered into the scene. And so now you can't get me out. And like my husband says to me, "Where are you going now, Julia? What are you doing? Who are you going to talk to?" So he's been my good friend for all these years. And so I report to him, ladies. But guess when I get home, who's the boss? So anyway, I guess my 15 minutes are up.